So welcome back to Learn Astrology with Mary. My name's Mary English. We're episode 415 and today we've got a special guest and we've got Caitriona and she's speaking to us from Ireland and she's a professional astrologer. She works in private practice. She works remotely and she has a very big presence on Instagram. So welcome, Caitriona. Lovely for you to be with us today. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks. And thank you so much for having me on, Mary. It's such a pleasure to be in your company and to learn from you as well.
It's really nice that you got into astrology and you're in a country like Ireland. So you're in a pretty Catholic part of the world. Can I ask you, if you don't mind me starting out with that question? On your website, it says you were a reluctant astrologer and you did it privately for a long time. Is that because it wouldn't be sort of socially acceptable to be doing that type of thing where you live, or am I totally off the mark?
No, you're exactly on the mark. Yeah, it's not very socially acceptable still in Ireland to be an astrologer. You do get, funny looks when you tell people you're an astrologer. And I essentially had to out myself as an astrologer when I was ready to do so. And I have other friends who are astrologers in Ireland who are a similar age to me, and they talk about their coming out story as well. So it is a very real phenomenon. And it's not unique to Ireland. I know it's happened in other countries too. I guess Ireland is getting a lot more progressive now, more open-minded. But when I was growing up in the late 80s, like a lot of people in Ireland, I was growing up in a home that was staunchly Roman Catholic, and lots of members of your family could be members of the clergy. And I actually had two uncles who were Catholic priests. One is deceased now. And, I grew up in a home where we prayed every day, and Mass was actually something that we didn't just celebrate in the church, we celebrated in our physical home. So I had a very religious Jupiter and Pisces upbringing, which I'm grateful for. I had a very strong faith growing up, but it also led to sort of a spiritual crisis because I had that questioning mind of, hang on a minute, eternal damnation, that doesn't sit very well with me. Like, I'm pretty much doomed. It was very fatalistic. So it led me to explore mythology as a child. And I got really obsessed with the Roman gods. And I found these, I think there were an Osborne set of books in the library, all about Greek and Roman mythology with beautiful illustrations. And I just was so fascinated by Zeus and so fascinated by Jupiter, not knowing that I was a Sagittarius rising. And I was being initiated as a child, Mary, for this world of astrology. And it was something like I just ate all those books up. And I remember asking the librarian, are there any more books on mythology? And she looked at me kind of funny and she went, not in the children's section. To say, you're a weird child. And I never made the correlation between the myths and the zodiac signs. That didn't happen till later in life. When I was a teenager, when I was in my teens and in my 20s, I realized, oh, wait, the planets and the zodiac signs, because I was always interested in my zodiac sign.
How did you even know about the zodiac signs when you were younger, though? This is a question I like to ask people. How did you even hear about astrology as a thing, or the fact that, whatever your sun sign is? Am I allowed to say you're a Cancer?
Yes.
Yes, right.
Yeah, and so, like, when I was younger, I remember, going to little gift shops and finding things with like Cancerian and, the date of the zodiac constellation and being like, I'm a Cancer, and identifying as a Cancer, and like the idea of self-discovery and learning something about yourself. And Cancer always had the qualities sensitive, empathetic, cranky, moody, the stereotypical Cancerian thing. And I would be like, yeah, like I'm some of those things, maybe not all of those things. And, now upon reflection as an adult, I can say, yeah, I have all those qualities, but I also have a way more than that. But I liked the idea of understanding people through the lens of their zodiac sign. So even as a child, I would see these little key rings and these bookmarks and feel like drawn to them, that I couldn't explain it. And I remember getting a book as a gift with the 12 zodiac signs, which was...
So who gave you the gift? Who gave you the gift, the book?
I would love to remember. I think it could have been, my parents every year for Santi, we'd get toys. And we also would get a book. And one year I was gifted a book about the zodiac signs because I guess they knew I was very interested in that kind of thing. Not that they wanted to encourage it, but I was interested. And it was a book all about the 12 zodiac signs. Can't remember the name of the book, don't know where the book is, but it was so dog-eared, Mary. Like I read it and reread it, I absorbed it, and it was just wow. And I did it with all my siblings, and being up in a Roman Catholic home, I had a lot of siblings.
So how big is the family then? How many are there?
There was 7 of us.
Oh wow, there was 5 of us. Yeah,
And I was the only Cancerian, so I was like, oh, I'm different, I'm set apart, I'm special. And that suited my Aries moon very well. And I started learning, you know, I could see that my Aquarius and Gemini sister, I was like, oh, well, they're very logical and scientific. And then my Pisces sister, she's very like imaginative like me, and my Pisces brother and my Scorpio brother. And yeah, I had a Taurus brother as well. And I would observe them like I was studying the zodiac signs and seeing their qualities. And some of them, you know, I have to say, some of my brothers and sisters really showed the stereotypical qualities of some of the zodiac signs, and we all have to start there, don't we, in the beginning?
Yes, and I think I do get cross with people that put the sun sign astrologers down. I'm effectively a sun sign astrologer because I've written a book for each of the signs of the zodiac, and I classify myself as a sun sign astrologer. Not that I can't do other types of astrology, because I do, because where I live, which is in the UK in Bath, people don't speak astrology, so it's pointless me even going into those things, and quite a lot of clients aren't going to know that their chart comprises of all the signs of the zodiac. They're not just their sign, because they're going to have things in other signs of the zodiac, but yeah, everybody has to. I mean, I started with Linda Goodman. That was how. But I was lucky. I had an auntie, and she was heavily into astrology, and she was a Catholic, and she did everybody's charts all the time. But my parents didn't. But she knew a lot of astrology. She was a Gemini with Moon in Leo. She knew tons, and she could do charts. And when she died, I got all her books. I asked my cousins who weren't even interested in it, can I have her books? And I've still got her ephemeris, bless, with my date and time of birth written in it.
Oh, what a gift! What a gift! Yeah. And I actually think the sun signs, I made a video about this on my page before, that, you know, without the sun, there would be no life on earth. And then people are so quick to say, oh, your sun sign isn't important, and that your rising sign is more important. Well, I say, like, your sun is the spark of light where the soul entered the birth chart, and the glyph is a circle with a little dot in the center. So surely, like, that means something, you know, that the sun is like, you know, the purest essence of who you are. Lately, when I go out socializing and I tell people, oh yeah, I'm a karmic astrologer, they often say, oh, guess my zodiac sign. Really quickly. And I'm like, oh, I don't like to play this game. And they know, no, come on, guess. And the sad part is, Mary, I always get it right. So I met a beautiful girl recently, and she was tall. She had gorgeous cheekbones, and she was like an English rose beauty, black hair, beautiful pale skin. And she said, guess my zodiac sign. And I said, no, I don't like to play this game. And she said, no, guess. And I just said, are you a Capricorn? And she screamed. And I just said, she was like, how did you know? And I said, well, your sculpted, chiseled cheekbones. I said, you either had Saturn in the first house or you were a Capricorn sun. And I said, you're classic English rose beauty. You know, you're a traditional beauty. Like it's the first thing I saw when I looked at you. I said, she's a classic Capricorn. And sometimes people are frightened that, you know, you can know astrology that deeply, that all of the signs, as you know, they have tells, they things they give away, like the Taurus nose, the Aries eyebrows, you know, the Cancer rising face. It's just fascinating. I love learning astrology through observing the people around me. I guess that's part of maybe the Pluto and Scorpio generation effect too, the people watching, the looking and the seeing. Watching how my Taurus brother, he will come home at Christmas, he'll put on his bathrobe, he'll sit down, he'll pour himself a glass of wine, and he'll watch a marathon of Harry Potter movies. And he is the Taurus cliche.
Not going to move.
And if you ask him to do something, he'll do it, but he'll do it slowly.
Actually, I guess it does happen. Some recently asked me, so this is a therapist, I went to a therapist, and she said, guess. I told her what I did. I don't know why I do that. And she said, well, guess what sign I'm in? I said, you're definitely an earth sign. And she said, which ones are they? And I said, well, it's Virgo, Taurus or Capricorn. And I said, and then she said, of those, which one do you think I am? I said, I don't know. I said, but you haven't moved much while you've been talking to me, and you've just been sat in this chair. So I said, it's either Capricorn or Taurus. And because I even said Taurus, she went, oh, God, how did you guess that? And I said, well, it's because you were just sat there, all sort of, hardly moving in the chair. It's just funny you say that about your brother. I'm no good at guessing the signs, but I'm better at guessing the elements, but not the signs of the zodiac. Yeah,
and
I can do elements.
You can really tell the earth elements because they move, they radiate security. You feel anchored in their presence. I imagine them like mountains. When I'm around a Taurus or a Capricorn, I always feel so secure and safe. And I'm like, oh, there's lovely, strong earth energy here. And even the way they walk, they have a heavier gait than the rest of us. Those who lack earth, myself, I have Mars and Capricorn. That's my only earth placement. But I can spot an earth sign a mile off. I always think they have the biggest tail of all the signs.
Yes, I think the elements are a useful thing to learn, especially for beginners. But I don't think it's anything that, because we're just about to have all the outer planets. Pluto's changed sign into air, and then Neptune's going to change sign into fire. And God help us, Uranus is going to change sign into fire as well. Is that right?
Or Gemini.
Uranus is going to go Gemini, which is air, yes. So we're going to have all this fire and air going on. We've had earth and water, and you just sort of think, how's that going to manifest? I don't know, because I wasn't alive the last time it happened.
Yeah, huge transformation.
You're a teacher, okay? So that's your day job, and then you also like teaching astrology. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so when, I am a teacher, that's my first love. And I knew from an early age I was going to be a primary school teacher. I announced it, as a child, that that's what I was going to do when I was older. So I think I had a bit of a premonition around it. And then what I've observed about astrology, when I started my astrology page, I started it really reluctantly. And my astrology teacher said, you need to start. And I said, oh, no, I'm not ready. And he said, no, you just start. You need to start. And then one of my astrologer friends in the class, you know her actually, Jasmina Brockovich.
Yes.
She said, the next new moon, there's a really good moon. Look, it's going to activate. I forget what it was activating for me. And she said, this is the time to start. She elected the time for me there in class. And it was like she raised the gauntlet. And I, being fire dominant, I love a challenge. So I was like, oh, I'm going to do it. I'm going to start my page. And when I remember starting my page thinking, what angle am I going to take? What am I going to talk about? And then I just said, I'm going to teach astrology because basically it's the most complicated thing you can ever learn. It's so complicated. You never finish learning it. You start it, you hope to get to a point in life where you're finished, but that point never comes. And I just said, if I can't make astrology easy enough for people to understand, I clearly don't understand it well enough myself. So it was a challenge for me. I was like, I teach 6-year-olds, I teach 5-year-olds, I teach 7-year-olds. Surely I can teach the nature of Neptune, the nature of Pluto. I can teach about the sun. I can teach the rising sign. And that's what I tried to do when I set up my page first, was to teach about the qualities of the inner planets, the outer planets, to teach the glyphs. And I didn't even touch off aspects because, like you said, Mary, about the sun in the birth chart. If somebody can't understand the basic, you can't run before you walk, essentially.
Yes.
I wanted to teach people to walk through their birth chart because that's how we all learned. We learned first by, oh my God, my son is in the 7th house or my son is in the 8th house, whichever house system you're using. And that's why I taught myself astrology through Placidus house system. And now I move between Placidus and whole sign, and I actually see whole sign is probably a bit easier for beginners, all right.
Yes.
But it's good to know as many house systems as possible, I believe.
That's such an awful thing for beginners when they first start learning. They use whatever system they come across, and then they learn that there are other house systems. Because I used to be on the astro.com websites forum quite a lot. I used to just read a lot and take part occasionally because it's been going a long time. And when somebody suddenly discovers that there are other house systems, then there'd be a long discussion and everybody jumping. This one's better. That one's, I use this system because, and it's the one thing, if you want to start an argument, ask people what house system they use.
Yeah, and I always say, if you want to know how evolved an astrologer is, an evolved astrologer should not ever stick with one. Like, you should be like, do you know what? Astrology is a tree. This is just one branch on the tree. And like, I'm open to being wrong. Like, so for example, my sun is in the 7th house in Placidus. It's in the 8th house in whole sign. I resonate with both of those really deeply. So my thing, I'm always saying to people, two things can be true at the same time. You don't have to be like hashtag whole sign, hashtag Placidus is better. You know, why can't we just actually, that's my Libra midheaven now probably coming in there, Mary. But I'm like, why can't we just like have a, you know, a bit of open-mindedness around it, the house systems. I actually sometimes I get a little bit, well, I don't get annoyed, but I get a little bit, I despair a little bit when I hear people like vehemently fight for one house system being superior to another. I think like, well, how would you know that? Like, astrology has been studied for millennia, and you know, that's like saying that Western tropical astrology is superior to Vedic. We don't know, like all of them have a place on the tree. Oh,
Yes.
we're so far now from the roots of the tree. How can we tell?
Well, yes, and different cultures will have different spiritual experiences, and different parts of the world have different ways of divinating. But the house system, we won't even go there because we'll be, I absolutely hear everything you're saying. But it is unfortunate how there have been some very large arguments about it, and also about which one started when, which therefore makes, I mean, I finished, so a lady finished learning astrology with me recently, and she especially likes the whole sign system. And that's fine. I teach equal house, but it doesn't matter. And so what I said to her was, you know, you can, and she hasn't made her mind up what system she wants to use, and she's going to experiment with it. And I said, that's fine. I said, but do you know that you can do a chart without any houses? So I took her over to astro.com and I demonstrated you could do a chart with no houses, and you can still do an interpretation. You can still do transits. Obviously, you can't change the ascendant. It doesn't matter what house system you use. The ascendant is always going to be a thing, provided you know it. If you live in the UK, you might not, because nobody knows what time they're born. But this lady was from the US, so she knew what time she was born. But you can do astrology perfectly fine without having any houses and going into that depth of detail for a client, because you can go, oh, you've got this and this sign and that sign, and this is above the horizon, that's below the horizon, and there's this and the other transit coming past. We can just ignore all the houses altogether if we want to, if we're not sure about it, or if we're a beginner astrologer. Because I remember first starting learning, it was just what sign everything was in, not necessarily where it was located. And like you say, I think it's important that people learn that there are more than one system. I interviewed a chap a while ago, and he uses a different system for a different method of divination. So somebody's asking about this, so he used this system. Somebody's asking about that, he used another system, and he's done them all. So he knows, you know, which one he's going to like the most. But yeah, we could be here forever talking about our systems.
Yeah, it's such a waste of our life force synergies and astrologers. Astrologers, we don't want to be like fighting on the internet about it. I always say we should like be out doing, we could be trying to find a cure for cancer, or doing something important with astrology. But yeah, it's funny though. Yeah, it's daunting when someone approaches astrology first and they start with Placidus, and then they find out there's other systems. And yeah, it's just something, it's a hurdle we all had to cross. And for everyone starting out, you'll get over that hurdle. Focus on one house system to start.
Absolutely. And not only that, is with the house system as well, because I know why people get worked up is that, oh, I've got sun in the 4th house, for instance, and then they find another system, they're now sun in the 3rd, and they've read this interpretation. And beginners always want to read the interpretations and for those interpretations to be true, but not to say that they're not true, you know. And then when it comes down to what's true and what's not true, I'm sure ancient astrologers didn't argue about it as much as we do.
No. And I always say when I read, take what resonates, leave what doesn't. I always say that's the start of my reading. That's my disclaimer. You know, rather than, you know, you don't have to, we always say you may have these qualities, so that you don't let astrology, I suppose, define who you are. You still have all of your personal agency. But like, if you are, I don't know, maybe if you have your moon in Taurus, which is such an amazing exalted placement, the shadow side of that is that you may get like locked into stubborn patterns. You may have a fixed mindset. It might be good for you sometimes to break out of your comfort zone. but you may also have all these other positive manifestations. So like
Yes.
May is a great word to use, I think, for all people learning astrology.
And so you speak two languages then? You speak English and you speak astrology, yes?
And Irish.
And Irish as well. Okay. So that you're multilingual, but we have to remember that astrology is a language to learn. And I think that's the nice thing that unites astrologers, regardless of where they're located, is that those symbols that we use to represent Pisces or Aquarius, those same symbols, exactly the same symbols that were developed right back in the day, a couple of thousand years ago type of thing. Those things haven't changed much, apart from Pluto. They've changed the symbol for that a couple of times.
As a karmic astrologer, I don't know if you'd agree with this, Mary, but I really believe, I've looked at the charts of some really big astrologers, and I believe that most of us who are deep in astrology, we practiced it in previous lifetimes. And when we incarnate now, we're remembering the astrology rather than learning it a lot of the time. And then like you're saying stuff sometimes, and I'm like, God, I don't know where that came from. It's like a download, but you're like, no, actually, this work is familiar to me. The reason it resonates is because I'm remembering. It's not like new. I've often felt that intuitively, and just I've been told it too when people have read my chart, but maybe it's just a conceited thing that all astrologers get. But I do believe like it's a beautiful thing that's passed down to us, and we're like just, the keepers of the flame. We're passing it on. The asteroid goddess Vesta, I always think of her. You're passing on the torch to the next people. When you're even if you could teach someone their sun, their moon, their rising, what a gift that would be to that person to know, oh, I'm a Virgo moon, that's why I need everything to be organized.
Yeah.
That's why I'm the person that makes all the plans in the group. That's so liberating for someone to find out that, I think. Because they could have been like, oh, astrology is rubbish. I'm a Cancer sun, but I'm a Virgo moon. Like when you explain, well, how they feel, how they navigate the world, how they feel their way through the world. I always say you have to feed your moon to feel safe in life. And I have an Aries moon. So what do I need to feel safe? I need a challenge. I need independence. I need, a bit of adventure. I need to push myself at times. I also need to fight for the underdog. That's probably what I need. And every moon sign, you look at your moon sign, think, what does that sign need? What do I need to feed it with in order to feel safe in life, so that I can feel comforted and suitably emotional?
And it's the unconscious. The moon is the unconscious, the subconscious.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Tell me about now. So you work with clients now. Tell me a bit more. So you've got your lovely Instagram page. So there you are, giving lots of information and explaining astrology. I love the way you do your videos, by the way. They must take you hours. But
really, I'm getting a bit quicker doing them. In the beginning, they did take me hours, but now I'm less of a perfectionist about it.
Mm-hmm. And so you're teaching astrology on your Instagram page, and you're seeing clients. So talk to me about how do clients work with you? How does that happen?
Yeah, so when I started my page originally, I had no intention of doing readings professionally. I was just going to teach astrology. I didn't even expect anybody to come to me for readings. I had no expectations around it at all. I had no expectations that I was going to set up a business. I was just going to set up an astrology page and create a following around astrology and educate people, educate the masses. And then one day I said I would offer readings. So I just put it up on my stories, readings, €20, which is, peanuts for readings. And to my surprise, a lot of people responded and said, yeah, I'd love a reading. And then those people went and told other people about the readings, who told other people about the readings. And it went from there. And next thing I know, I'm flooded, I'm swamped. And I remember I read for a girl who had 100,000 followers. She's a big influencer in Ireland. And I read for her, I think she paid €50 for her reading. I had kind of gotten a bit of sense at that stage, Mary, and I said, okay, I'm going to charge what I'm worth. And she went on her page and told her 100K followers. And next thing I had a couple of hundred people extra added to my Instagram overnight. And then I had all these bookings and I got totally overwhelmed and a bit stressed. And I would say, I can't read for you for 6 months. I can't read for you for 7, 8 months. And this waiting list came out of nowhere. And I was kind of a victim of my own success. So I made the decision, okay, I'm going to up my prices. I'm going to charge what I'm worth because people like this stuff and I'm getting great reviews. And then I said, okay, I'm going to create a website, because what was happening was I was managing all the bookings through my DMs, and I
Oh, that must have been a headache. Your phone
yeah,
must
it
have gone
was a
ping
headache.
every minute.
I wasn't expecting any of this. So I was like my own manager. I was managing, I was arranging the times, I was the whole lot, the headache of it. So energetically, I needed a space for the bookings to go so that I could go to my day job and not worry about the bookings. So I had this beautiful calendar and everything, and that was amazing. So normally when people come to me, how it works is there is a bit of a wait if you want an in-depth birth chart reading, but I always say, a reading comes to you when you need it most. That's my mantra in life. And I always say less is more with readings. You don't need to be going for 100 readings, or you don't need to be going for multiple readings. And I always say as well, an astrologer shouldn't be a crutch. You can't walk through life with a crutch. Limit the amount of readings you go for. And I say that with everything, with tarot, with runes, everything, you know. So when I get a client's details, I run their chart, I give them the choice on the booking form. If there's something specific they want me to look at, I'll give it particular attention at the end of the reading. So if that's career, money, love, health, but they don't have to tell me anything. And a lot of the time they leave it blank and tell me nothing. So if they tell me nothing, I run the chart. And the first thing I do always, Mary, because it's the way my astrology teacher taught me, and I love this way, I go in and I tell them, first of all, how much earth, air, fire, and water I see, and what they are lacking. And usually 90% of the time, it's very rare to get a birth chart that's balanced. 90% of the time, we're all lacking at least one element, or we're lacking one modality. So, the way there's the cardinal signs, the fixed and the mutables, and we'll tell them what their strongest energy is and what, like, I perceive as their weakest energy and how they might have compensated in life. And I also give them remedies. So, for example, if somebody is lacking a particular element, I'll give them the remedy for how to address that, redress the imbalance in their life. And then I will move through the chart, and I always start with the ascendant, and any planets that are conjunct that, I'll go through then the chart ruler. So if you were a Sag rising, I will look at Jupiter and all its aspects to describe, some of the big themes in your life. And then I kind of go through all the angles of the chart. I'm obsessed with the cross of incarnation. I always have been. So I'll go from the ascendant to the descendant to the IC to the MC. And I know people are like, what's she on about? I'm literally talking about this cross shape in your chart. And I will kind of discuss those. And then when I've that discussed, I go through, all of the main planets then in kind of a clockwise motion. Sometimes I'll jump around the chart as a typical, Sagittarius. I'll jump if something jumps out at me, but I'll kind of discuss the planets kind of in isolation and also with their aspects. And I love degree theory as well. It's kind of a pretty modern thing that some people don't like it, some people do. And sometimes if there's significant degrees repeated in the chart, I see like significant patterns and things repeated in life. And I'll read the chart in Placidus and in whole sign. And I know it's kind of a weird way to do things, but I have Chiron and Gemini. So I will say to the person, so like you have your sun in the first house, in whole sign, but in Placidus you have it in the second house. And this is how it might manifest. And I give them the two things. And I do that for all the placements, particularly if they move. And I'm able to do it in my head. I don't, when you get to a certain point in astrology, you don't need to be swapping the charts. And I think that's probably why I have a good success rate with accuracy with the charts, because I'm giving them a very nuanced picture of their energy. And I do a little kind of a transit thing. Then generally at the end, I tell them like where Saturn is or Pluto is, and the big players, the big hitters, and what the themes might be coming up for them right now. And and sometimes if I see a really difficult chart, only if I feel intuitively guided, I'll open up their human design, Mary, which is
okay.
Human design. But sometimes if I feel like someone's got a really difficult chart and they've maybe a very old soul, because I say all old souls have a difficult chart, I'll also say, okay, by the way, this is your human design, and I'm just going to give you the taste of it. This will also give you another key to unlocking, your destiny. And I love numerology too. And sometimes I would do that as well, but I generally don't have the time. By the time I've gotten through the birth chart, I'm generally like, it's a long reading.
Mhm.
you know, the whole birth chart experience with me. And then I record it all. It's like a little recording. I send it off to the person and they listen to it like a podcast, and they can listen to it as many times as they want and take notes. There is no interaction with me. And I know a lot of astrologers might disagree with doing it that way, but I made a decision in the beginning that like I'm very sensitive to other people's energy, and I didn't feel that I would be able to accurately read a chart with precision if I had a person looking at me, putting me under pressure or asking me questions and throwing me off. I
Mm.
love to get totally focused and absorbed and lost in the chart. I go into the chart, I'm in there, and when I'm finished, I come out, and I usually kind of try to clear myself of the other person's energy and step out of it.
Mhm.
Um, but it's not really a consultation with me. It's kind of it's more of a, you know, this is what I offer to you. It's an offering I'm giving the client rather than a consultation experience. And some people love it. I'm sure other people might prefer, you know, a more interactive approach with an astrologer. It doesn't suit my energy style. And I guess I have Mercury square Pluto, and I just find I can go in really deep, but I can't be disturbed. I'm in there. And
Yes, I do a thing called pre-records because of the podcast. So
yeah.
that's for people that live in a different country and they can't book a session with me
Mhm.
and get a time that will suit the two of us. But some clients definitely want to pre-record anyway because they
Mhm.
want to be able to listen back to it, and it doesn't suit me. I mean, I do them. It isn't the biggest type of appointments that I have for myself. Most of mine are live, talking to the person, and we'll go through the stuff. However, the people that I do them for, I'll find out from them beforehand what in particular they need to know at the moment and answer that for them in the recording. But I mean, there's lots of different ways to skin a cat. You know, there's
Yeah.
no
I
right or
think
wrong way. You
Gemini
have to do
moon
what
as well.
suits you. Mm.
Yeah, your Gemini moon, I'm sure you get very like you're feeding your Gemini moon every time there's that back and forth interaction. Whereas my Aries moon like absolutely loves being alone with the birth chart. I'm like, oh, I'm so happy I'm here alone with this birth chart and I'm just in heaven. But yeah, it's all about, you know, what works best for your energy style. And I know I'd listened to Chris Brennan, you know, the great American astrologers,
As you
just
podcast, yeah, the astrology
yeah,
podcast.
about his about, you know, the interactive experience and consultations with a client. And I'm sure like it's great practice to do a consultation process, and maybe I'll get to a point in my career where I'm more comfortable with that, but I'm not
Mm.
comfortable with it right now. And I have plenty of clients, and people are happy with the offering, so maybe in the future I'll consider it. I have done
Mm.
face-to-face birth charts. I did a workshop before, and it was great. I did some face-to-face charts, but it was a little bit overwhelming. I did have to like study the charts beforehand, and it was a bit overwhelming. The person in front of me and I got great feedback on it, and they loved it, the participants. But it was intense for me to have a lot of people workshopping and doing their charts. And I do feel like people get more bang for their buck with a one-on-one kind of experience.
Yes, and in your case, because you're taking the time to go through everything that's in the chart, you're covering everything anyway. You know,
Mm.
like you said, it's interesting what you said earlier, that you don't need to have readings all the time. I do have to discourage some clients from booking every week.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember when I was starting my business, I read for a girl and she was like, "Oh, that was amazing. You knew everything. You read me like a book. You knew so much. Could I keep you on retainer?" And I'd never even heard that expression before. And I said, "How do you mean?" And she said, "So basically," she said, like, you'd read my transits every month and I'd consult with you and I'd pay you for this. And I thought about it and I went, oh no, this would be a very like dangerous path for me to go down, because I said I'd become her crutch. And as an
Yes,
Aries moon, being ruled
you won't want to be any
can't be
crutches.
anyone's crutch. Like I'm like, no, 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 like I'm gonna kick that crutch. I'll make you crawl before I give you a crutch. So I have clients as well that will come into my DMs and they'll have had an awful day. And you know, it's all about boundaries too. And you have
Yes.
to be compassionate as an astrologer too. And you listen to their problems. But I'll always say to them, and they'll say, oh, I need another reading, or I'm booking in for,
Mm.
and sometimes they will ask me beforehand, should I book in? And I will say to them, you know, you don't need you. It's been less than maybe 6 months since I read for you. Do you
Mm.
do you really need another reading? Like sometimes I say, to clients, we need to honor the mystery of our lives unfolding. And that sounds really ironic coming from an astrologer. But like, I've looked at my own astrology, I've looked at my zodiacal releasing, I've looked at my secondary progressions, I've gone and looked at them all. And even I can't predict my own future. Sometimes I get caught off guard because I'm not objective about my own chart. I don't have that objectivity. And I'm so busy doing other people's charts, I don't even notice that my car is about to break down. And then I look back retrospectively, like, there it is. That's the transit that broke my car. That's the transit that caused my illness. That's the transit that caused the dispute. And I think there's a lovely sacredness to, like, and Chris Brennan touches on this too. Do no harm as an astrologer, allow the mystery of life to unfold. Tell stuff that's constructive and helpful, but also as astrologers, we see some stuff and there'll always be a degree of keeping some stuff back and knowing what to say and what not to say. And that's a huge skill. And that's something, can it be taught? Can it be learned? I'm not sure. I think some people have that skill, Mary. They have an innate, intuitive, empathetic skill of knowing when to be quiet. And when to say, because if we say every single thing we see, sometimes we can do harm. And there's great power in this beautiful gift of astrology, and we have to learn how to harness the gift to do no harm, just to do good, to help support people, particularly if we see a negative transit, or something we might perceive as challenging coming up.
Yes, and also, I do point out to people if there is going to be something coming up, but it depends what the planet is and what can they do about it, because there's some things you can do something about things and other things you can't, because it's part of your sort of soul progression and stuff. But changing the subject slightly, you've got Uranus near to your ascendant, and then you worked with a guy called Matt who calls himself
the Uranian astrologer. And I'll tell you an even better story, Mary.
Go on.
When I got into astrocartography, I started looking at my astrocartography, and a friend of mine who was also in the class said, "Oh my God, Caitriona, do you not see?" And I said, "What?" She said, Matt is born in Turkey. The town in Turkey where Matt was born, my Saturn line in astrocartography runs right through that town. And I have Saturn in Sagittarius, and I said, "Oh my God, he was meant to teach me astrology." Like, this was the man. And I waited a long time before I took formal lessons. I taught myself for years. I taught myself badly. I'll admit that. Anybody who's taught themselves astrology, we all make mistakes. We teach ourselves badly. But it's a beautiful process too. And I do think it's good to get to a place where you're going to astrology classes and you have some degree of astrology knowledge.
It's very helpful. I taught myself. Yeah.
You don't want to be going in completely blind. So when I started maths class, I had a huge wealth of astrology built up, and I had been taught by, I say, 100 different astrologers, because there were so many astrologers all over the world that I was admiring and emulating and watching on YouTube and reading about in magazines and papers and podcasts. And then by the time I found Matt, I was like, I always say, when the student is ready, the master appears.
Oh, yes.
So he was doing his first ever astrology class when I found him.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you caught him right at the beginning.
Yeah. So I was one of his first students, and I had all these different pockets of astrology, and he just tied them together for me. I couldn't really, I was a bit, as you say, a sun sign astrologer. I was terrible at aspects, or at least I perceived myself as terrible. I said to him, I want to know, what does it mean if a person has Mercury square Saturn? He was trying to explain to me, you need to know the nature of Mercury. You need to know the nature of Saturn. You need to know the nature of a square. And then you need to make the interpretation. And I was like, but how? I wanted, of course, like everyone, I wanted a cookbook.
Yes.
It's Mercury square Saturn. Now, because I've read so many charts, I realize Mercury square Saturn can be so many different things. Why would I give a cookbook interpretation to anyone?
Because it depends what signs they're in, what modalities they're in, what houses they're in, what
and if there's any other aspects to the Saturn or the Mercury. So now I guess I understand why I needed to wait that long. So I got formal training from Matt, and I'm also trained in Uranian dial astrology, which is like a more advanced, another level of astrology. But I don't currently market myself as a Uranian astrologer because I feel I need to practice more. It's very, very complicated, and I feel that there's so much in in your normal astrology, Mary.
Mhm.
Mind if I go into Uranian dial? It's like another level of astrology that's very, very scarily accurate, to be honest. And the thing is about accuracy in astrology, I don't think accuracy is something that should be our primary goal. I like the idea of astrology for understanding my psychology and how I work and how I operate. But I know that Vedic astrologers place a high degree of emphasis on accuracy and prediction and timing. I know that Uranian astrologers place, a lot of emphasis on prediction and timing. And I just think some things in life we're better off maybe not knowing all of them.
Not knowing. Yeah, I mean, I don't do too much in the way of predictions. I ask people because I'm working with a lot of people that are in a crisis at the moment and want to find a way out of the crisis that they're in. So obviously it'll be a transit for, I don't know, Saturn is going to go on for another 6 months or whatever. But I think if you start making predictions, you might be making self-fulfilling prophecies for people. You could be, don't get me started about people that get told they're going to die or get squished by a car or something by other people that then come to see me, and I go, no, actually that isn't the case, because you can't predict those types of things. I don't think personally, and I've done a whole podcast now, I don't think predictions are particularly helpful. I think what is helpful is making the person feel better now and empowered so they can go to where they want to be. So they want to be married or have children or get a job or move house or go to another country or learn something new. So what do we need to do now to be able to do that? So what parts in your chart will help you be able to achieve that? But for me to sit here and go, oh, you're going to be this, you're going to be that, that's such a that is probably what old-fashioned astrologers did, and that might be what they wanted to do a long time ago. But that is, I know, quite respect other people that do it, but that isn't what I do myself. I've got a bit of analogy to produce. I think it's better to feel good now, because anyway, tomorrow doesn't exist. This is where predictions fall down. I mean, I do Eckhart Tolle and Byron Katie and living in the now and all of this. So tomorrow doesn't exist, and yesterday's just a memory. Yesterday's not a thing unless you're a historian. All you have is the now, and so how can we make you feel good now and focused on what you want to do, and so that everything's gone away that might have hurt you or upset you or whatever. Because the things that people bring to a consultation, which is slightly different from, a pre-record, because they might not tell you what might have happened. But a lot of the consultations I work with people that has unending trauma is what I'm working with constantly, which is fine because that's what I'm trained to help people with. However, staying in that trauma isn't helpful for anyone. So then you have to look, well, what nice aspects have you got? Oh, you've got a lovely thing going on between your Uranus and your Venus, or you've got something really cushy going on between your sun sign and your Pluto, or whatever. Let's use those nice strong things in your chart. That those are the things that will allow you to get out of those difficult places. But astrology is so helpful. For me, I found it answered life, the universe and everything. What was astrology like for you when you learned it? What did it bring to you that you didn't have before?
So I'll be really honest and say that when I kind of got into my birth chart first and learned some things in it, I didn't like everything I saw. Mary. I'll be honest, I didn't.
Okay.
I went, oh, and I had a little bit of, okay, how can I explain this? I always say astrology, a good astrologer will put hope back into your heart, okay? And remember, I was teaching myself astrology in the beginning and modeling through my birth chart and dealing with internet interpretations and, maybe cheap interpretations, we'll call them, and fatalistic interpretations. And I remember learning, I read an interpretation of Venus sextile Chiron, and it said, my Venus is in an exact sextile with Chiron. And it said, this is a person who experiences difficulties with relationships. And I remember just reading it and be like, that's it? That's it? What? Nothing helpful. Nothing to this is a person actually who can heal other people in relationships. This is another person. This is the person who actually is healing gifts. This is the person who could potentially become an astrologer. This is a person who could go into holistic medicine, all of these other different things. This is a person who could potentially attract people into their life who need healing. This is a person that has a lot of wounding that, might be mirrored back to her through some of her platonic or romantic relationships, but I didn't get that. And I remember reading that aspect and getting very upset, being like feeling a sense of doom. And that's why I think like we have such I've such a sense of duty around astrology now, that like we need to protect and preserve it and make sure that we don't let AI or other, apps pollute people's minds with these interpretations, because it was an app actually that taught me that. And I remember my Gemini sister said, close that app, delete that app. I was like, no, I'm learning astrology.
It is the one thing that I recently again did a podcast on that, about app interpretations, and I'm just in the middle of writing an article for the Astrological Association, and I'm mentioning there about a podcast listener who had got an app interpretation of her child's chart, and it was about Chiron, and that the child would be sexually abused. She was reading an adult interpretation for a child, and there's no, that isn't going to happen. And I had to explain to her, I'm sorry, that was an app, and I'm really sorry that you read that, but it's not true. Anyway, don't get me started on that subject, because it will go on for.
Regulate this, isn't it? You see,
there's no way of regulating it. Forget
it. And then, like, yeah, there are actually some good apps out there. I will say that there are some apps, but I always say to people, with a bit of experience and time, you can look at these interpretations and not perceive them as fatalistic, and not take them to heart, and not see it as being doomed. But I remember I saw lots of things I didn't like in my birth chart. Like I saw Jupiter squared Chiron. I didn't see all my beautiful aspects. I didn't see my Venus trine Uranus. I didn't see Jupiter as my chart ruler. What a gift.
Yeah.
I didn't see, my
lucky bunny.
Yeah, I didn't see my
and Jupiter isn't retrograde either.
Yeah, it's not retrograde either. Like my Mars in Capricorn, yes, my Mars is retrograde, but Mars in Capricorn, oh my God, like it's such an incredible placement to have. Like, how honored am I to have that? And my Aries moon, okay, not the easiest placement, but like ultimately my favorite placement in my birth chart. I love my Aries moon so much. Like it's gotten me through so many things in life. It's sustained me. It's that fire that just won't ever go out. And I just said, like, I'll always, it's that fire inside of your heart there, when you have an Aries moon. I always say it's such a gift to be like a fiery moon sign. I'll never ever take it for granted. Even when I get knocked down and that fire goes out momentarily, I'm right back up again in the morning, because I'm ruled by Mars, and he'll kick me out of bed, so there's so many like lovely aspects. So I always say to people, when you're learning astrology, like, don't learn it from one source. Get multiple sources. And then when you're ready, find a teacher that resonates with you, read the reviews, go to classes, and like find your community, find your tribe. And like the best gift I think learning astrology formally gave me was, it gave me permission to be myself, which was an astrologer, and also find my tribe. I have friends now who are astrologers. I had never met another living astrologer in Ireland until I set up my astrology page. And then I found another girl, a similar age to me, from a similar background, from the southwest of Ireland. She was a bit like, I hate using the analogy of Little Britain, David, the only gay in the village. She was like, I'm the only astrologer in my village. I'm the only astrologer in my village. I realized, I wasn't so alone. And we became really good friends. We read each other's birth charts. And now we chat every day on WhatsApp, and we've met up loads. And I have a friend, a real living friend. She's flesh and bones, who's an astrologer, and she's not on a screen. And I think, oh, how amazing. And I have to thank, I think, Pluto and Aquarius for that too, because when Pluto came into my third house, he brought all the astrologers into my life, and it was so scary at first. I was like, wow, I'm on YouTube with an astrologer, I'm on Instagram with an astrologer. Oh my God, I was, all these people I had admired, yourself included, Mary. I found my community, and I was so afraid, and now they have welcomed me with open arms, and there's space for all of us here, no matter, bless the broken road that got me here, but no matter what road I took here and how long it took me to get here, I'm here now, and we've something to share and learn from each other. So it's such a lovely world, the astrology world, by and large, it is really lovely.
And I think it's important to focus on the parts that are lovely and not to be focused on the bits that aren't. And I think that's a raison d'etre to life as well. If we carry on, not you, but I'm just saying, if people were to carry on moaning about everything, I mean, where do you live? The most beautiful place in the world, and you are a beautiful person yourself too, but you're living in somewhere that is beautiful, just by the coast, the sea, and la la la. I live in a city. There's seas miles away from where I am. It's a beautiful city, mind. But that there is beauty in astrology, and I think we should be encouraging it and encouraging the positivities of it as well, and reassuring people that astrology doesn't have to be negative and shouldn't be negative. Why would any form of divination or therapy, or whatever you want to call astrology, why should that be negative and scary for people? I quite agree.
And I think it'd be like a collective. Oh, sorry, Mary. I think it'd be like a collective task for us with Pluto and Aquarius. Like, we'll be challenged now to basically tidy up astrology, maybe, and we might have to look at some parts of astrology that we maybe haven't liked to look at, and maybe regulate it a bit more, maybe not streamline it a bit more, because everybody, different strokes for different folks, or whatever. But like, we might have to look at some things we don't like in our own community, in all wellness and holistic communities. All the non-conventional communities will come together, will get stronger. But I do think like the networking will be important. No astrologer will be an island anymore now. It'll all be about working together in community and building a strong sense of community and mutual respect. And as you say, like, focusing more on the positives and all of our shared goals.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Darling, thank you so much for being with us today. How can people find you? What would be your address?
Find me is at Caitriona Astro on Instagram, or Caitriona Astro on TikTok, and I also have YouTube. I'm probably most active on my Instagram, and my website is caitrionaastro.eu. If anybody wants to book in for a reading, there I've lots of availability for little mini readings now in 2025, and that's
these are the Marys that you call the Marys.
Yeah, the Marys are like my emergency reading based after a client called Mary. Yeah, she came to me for an emergency reading, and she inspired me to make this reading. And then I have other readings called the shadow sign, little mini readings where I go through like the elemental balance and like the most important things I see for a person.
Cool. We'll put all the links to how people can contact you. I'll put them on the podcast show notes, and they'll also be on YouTube in the description. And it's been absolutely wonderful speaking with you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mary. It's just been amazing to chat to you. I could talk to you all night, as you probably can see.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much to Caitriona for being with us today. Now, I will have to spell things because, as it sounds, isn't always how it's spelt. So let me spell for you what the website addresses are. So Caitriona's Instagram address is instagram.com/ and it's CAITRIONA and then Astro, ASTRO. Now her website address is, so the website is CAITRIONAASTRO.EU. That's because she's in Ireland, so her website address is going to be EU, which is for Ireland. So it's Caitriona and then Astro, but Caitriona is spelt with the I in it because it's Gaelic spelling. And then you can find her. I have put the link on the YouTube channel, but the YouTube address is, so the full address is youtube.com, then / and then the @ symbol, CAITRIONAASTRO. So it's absolutely fab to have a guest this week. I hope you're well. I'll be back next week, and have a good week. Bye bye now.